Raising awareness of the plight of the Rohingya, 3 Nobel Peace Laureates visit a refugee camp in Bangladesh to hear of their suffering. But how does the visit help the Muslim minority? And is it embarrassing for Myanmar's own Nobel Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hashem Ahelbarra. Myanmar's leader has been widely criticized for turning a deaf ear to global condemnation of her response to the Rohingya crisis. Now, Aung San Suu Kyi faces a new warning from 3 women who, like her, are Nobel Peace Prize winners. Wake up or face prosecution for genocide is their message. Irish peace campaigner Mairead Maguire, Tawakkol Karman from Yemen, and Iranian Shirin Ebadi are in Bangladesh. They are touring Rohingya refugee camps to assess their needs, particularly women who say soldiers from Myanmar raped and tortured them. We'll get to our guests in a moment, but first, let's have a look at the plight of the Rohingya. Hundreds of Rohingya continue to pour over the Myanmar border into Bangladesh every week. Both countries recently signed an agreement to gradually repatriate refugees voluntarily, but the UN says conditions are not yet conducive for returning home, and the Muslim minority has safety concerns in Buddhist-dominated Myanmar. Around 700,000 Rohingya fled to neighboring Bangladesh since the military crackdown began last August. They told reporters of murders, rape, torture, and the burning of their homes. The UN describes the military offensive as a textbook case example of ethnic cleansing and have appealed to Myanmar to stop, but the UN Security Council fell short of imposing sanctions on Myanmar. The Rohingya, who numbered around 1 million at the start of last year, are one of many ethnic minorities in Myanmar, but the government denies them citizenship and sees them as illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. The UN Secretary General says the Rohingya are one of the most discriminated against populations in the world. Antonio Guterres called for immediate assistance and long-term solutions.
I call on the government to ensure unfettered humanitarian access in Rakhine State, and I appeal to the international community to support those who have fled to Bangladesh. The international community needs to come together to support the safe, voluntary, dignified and sustainable return of refugees to their areas of origin or choice in accordance with international standards.
Let's get the thoughts of our guests. Joining us in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, Mairead Maguire, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, now visiting Rohingya refugees. In Berlin, Khin, he is the director of the Burmese Rohingya Organization, UK. And in Kuala Lumpur, Charles Santiago, chair of ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights. Welcome to you all. Let me start by asking Ms. Mairead Maguire this. This is not the first time we've heard leaders from different parts of the world saying this is one of the most persecuted communities on earth and that the Rohingya are the world's most friendless people, but nothing has been done to alleviate their pains. What do you think, from your experience, your recent visit, should be done immediately about this particular crisis?
Well, I think immediately that the action should be taken for the International Criminal Court to immediately set up hearings for the Burmese government for the Rohingya genocide that is happening in the 21st century. That should be the immediate thing. Immediately, Aung San Suu Kyi, as a moral leader and a person people have looked to for hope, should immediately go to the villages where the people have been raped, murdered, killed, burnt out of their villages and had to escape into another country. There's 1 million Rohingya people sitting in this camp in Bangladesh. She has a responsibility, and I hope that she'll go and she'll speak out against the actions of the Burmese military. This can be stopped tomorrow. All it needs is a phone call to the Burmese military from those in power to say, stop killing, murdering, raping the Rohingya people. we heard testimonies today which would break your heart, and she can stop it. This can be stopped from the top, because the orders are coming from the top.
I see your point.
And they think that they are immune and nobody will do anything about it. It can't be stopped, and stopped now.
Mr. Khin, when you hear statements from people like Mairead Maguire describing what is happening as a policy of genocide and ethnic cleansing, do you have any hopes that the international community will listen to people like Mairead and stop the suffering of thousands of people in Myanmar?
I think I really appreciate, and many thanks to Maguire, Nobel Laureate, and to others visiting to the camps. As a Rohingya myself, I have also met these victims. It's been going on, this genocide, for around 4 decades. So it is important that to stop this genocide from policymakers, Nobel laureates, intellectuals, every society must come forward to stop this genocide. We need everyone's support and solidarity to stop this genocide. I really appreciate, and thanks again, visiting to the camps and meeting up Rohingya women. It's giving them a big moral support to the victims who face mass rape and mass slaughter and other atrocities by their Burmese military. I think international community we have seen is quite disappointing. UN Security Council, they sat down for 3 times, and we have not seen any stronger action. This is very disappointing.
Okay.
And today we have seen also EU have some conclusion from Council. So it is not that much help, that much thing to stop this genocide to the Burmese military and the government. We need concrete, effective action from, individual government to call for ICC referral to bring those responsible to justice and others.
Mr. Santiago, I mean, against the backdrop of all the international condemnation, why does the government of Myanmar seem to be in denial about what is happening?
The government of Myanmar is not in denial. They know exactly what they have done, but they have this pretense that it is within their right to do so. Because
within their right to
Rohingyas,
kill people, drive thousands of people out of their home, scorch land.
They know exactly what they have done. I was there in Cox's Bazar last month. Yeah, I was there in Cox's Bazar last month, and I met the refugees. I met a whole about 20 to 25 refugees who are based in Cox's Bazar. In fact, I also met with some new people who had just come in from Rakhine State, and this was taking place at the same time as the governments of Myanmar and Bangladesh were concluding the repatriation plan. What they told us was very clear. They were raped, their land was burnt, their houses were burnt, their wives were raped. It was it's just lots of horrible stories that they had told us. But the point basically, and the important question now is, why is the international community silent and quiet about Myanmar? And the quick answer to a very difficult question is that because of investment opportunities in Myanmar. I think a lot of companies, a lot of countries see Myanmar as an investment opportunity, and therefore they do not want to rock the boat at the international level, or even pull up the army to be sanctioned, or even to question and criticize Aung San Suu Kyi. I think the biggest responsibility in this context goes to ASEAN. ASEAN has been pussyfooting on this issue. Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, and ASEAN has kept quite silent. In fact, actually ignoring what had happened in Rakhine State, and in so doing, legitimizes what's happening in terms of the genocide that has been taking place. I think ASEAN has been totally irresponsible.
All right. Ms. Mairead, when you address Aung San Suu Kyi saying that she has to act or face prosecution, isn't she the most intriguing part of this particular puzzle? She's someone who's suffered trying to defend human rights, but suddenly she is very silent, denial, saying this is an iceberg of misinformation. What's the problem here? Do you think that she is more concerned about protecting fragile democracy in her own country and putting the issue of the Rohingya on the back burner?
Well, I think when you are a leader in a country that all the people should be your responsibility, not just a section of the community. And there are many ethnic groups in Burma who have never been protected. I went with Bishop Tutu 17 years ago up to the Burma-Thailand border, to the Karen people, and we met women who had been raped by Burmese soldiers, hundreds of them, and they were sitting on a border absolutely distraught. And the Burmese government, this is not a new thing going on. This has been going on for a long time, that the Burmese government can do what they like. Now, I would invite Aung San Suu Kyi just to consider this one story from a woman today, 20 years of age. The Burmese soldiers came into her village. They killed her husband. They took her and her baby out to a lake. They threw the 6-month-old baby into a lake and it was drowned. They dragged her back to her home. Burmese soldiers held her down while another soldier raped her. And then they lifted her, thinking she was dead, took her out and threw her in a field and left her for dead. Now, I would say, what sort of leadership have you got in Burma when it allows its soldiers to do this to innocent women, children? And that story can be multiplied over and over. So this is gang rape, murder, torture, a genocidal policy to destroy a whole people. This is what this is about. And Aung San Suu Kyi, as a leader in her country, must speak out in defence of the defenceless.
I get your point. Myanmar's leader is widely criticised for her response to the crisis, especially because Aung San Suu Kyi was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. The state chancellor doesn't have control over the military, and she hasn't condemned the use of force by troops during their crackdown on the Rohingya. Suu Kyi has blamed what she called a huge iceberg of misinformation for the crisis in Rakhine State. In a TV address last September, she condemned all human rights violations in Rakhine, but didn't specify who would be qualified to return and how the repatriation process would work. In her first address to the United Nations General Assembly last year, Suu Kyi defended her government's efforts to resolve the crisis. This year, as she faced mounting international criticism for failing the Rohingya, she cancelled her trip to the United Nations in New York. Mr. Khin, what is it that which you think Aung San Suu Kyi can do immediately to stop the problem? Can she interfere with the military? How can she solve this crisis?
You know, I have to point out here the bottom line. If she has willingness to do, she could do a lot of things. And every time international community sees she is not controlling the military, but we have to look at, she is defending mass atrocities what Burmese military committed genocide against Rohingya. Recently, we have to look at, you know, Bill Richardson, who is 30 years friend of Aung San Suu Kyi, you know, he was a member of Kofi Annan Recommendation Implementation Committee. He realized it is whitewash. There is no such talk about citizenship issue, full citizenship issue, safety, security issue there. So we can't see any attitude toward Rohingya change by their from military and Aung San Suu Kyi. Particularly, she is taking side of the military. She is totally complicit of this genocide. If she really wants, she could do a lot. For me, frankly speaking, as a Rohingya, we Rohingya have supported her. I campaigned for her release last 10 years ago, you know, but I don't think she will do anything. I have to, as a victims who are suffering in Bangladesh, victims of genocide, I met last 2 weeks ago, we need to bottom line here. The only thing international community must intervene, UN must intervene to protect the Rohingya.
Speaking of that,
so we call in here, when we talk here, protected return to protected homeland in Myanmar. That is what we're calling for, because Burmese military and government have no attitude. There is no
I see your point.
Let me never change.
Include Mr. Santiago in this debate. Mr. Santiago, we tend to put the blame most of the time on the Myanmar government and Aung San Suu Kyi, but there are still elements that need to be clarified. When the Bangladeshi government signs this repatriation deal with the Myanmar's government, which paves the way for people to be sent back home, have those people been consulted in advance? Do we know whether they want to go back home when the situation remains very delicate for them and their villages completely razed by the government?
We met while I was in Cox's Bazar last month. We had met with officials who are part of the negotiating team with the Myanmar government as well as the military. And we also met the refugees, as I said earlier. It is very clear from the point of the refugees that they do not want to return. And they had put some conditions, and I believe they have already communicated that decision to the UN, UNHCR and other UN agencies. One is they want safety repatriation program. They also want a peacekeeping force in Rakhine State in order to ensure that they will not be raped and killed again. Number two, they want citizenship. They want freedom of worship, as well as compensation for the loss of life, as well as for the loss of property, and so on and so forth. Till all of this are guaranteed, there is no appetite to go back. And as I said earlier, while the negotiations are going on, and while the government of Bangladesh is planning to send back or repatriate some of them, more people are coming into Cox's Bazar. And that's because the burning, the looting, the raping is still going on. And therefore, it doesn't create a climate of confidence for the refugees in Cox's Bazar to return, though.
Speaking of that
climate, I want to come back to the
Speaking of that particular climate of confidence and confidence-building measures, let me go to Ms. Mairead. I mean, from your experience in campaigning for peace in communities shattered by ethnic, religious divisions, don't you think that the international community, when it comes to Myanmar, should address, first of all, the root causes of the problem? Why are they denied the right to be citizens? Why the government continues to consider them as illegal migrants? And then once you solve that, you talk about the repatriation.
Well, the tragedy here is that the Burmese government have denied these people their identity. They don't even use the word Rohingya. And when people are speaking, they actually are warning them, don't use the word Rohingya. There's been many high-profile visitors have gone into Burma, and before they went, they were told, don't use the word Rohingya. And yet we have the Rohingya people whose history is well documented in Burma. So they are a people, they are an ethnic people. And we know there are 135 different ethnic groups in Burma, but the Rohingya people have been removed of that list. So they have no rights. They're not allowed to work. They're held within camps inside Burma. And we heard today that this village, they were actually sealed off for 6 months by Burmese soldiers and not allowed even to go out of their village. So the whole human rights and rights question for the Rohingya people has got to be dealt with. They have to be given recognition and citizenship, and that protected and their lands given back and restored to them, because they've been stripped of everything. And so that has to be undertaken, so when they go back they will be protected. But here on the border, in the no man's land, there are 2,000 sitting in the middle of nowhere who've lost everything. And if they come in here to Bangladesh, they will become refugees. And if they go back into Burma, they will become tortured, persecuted, and nameless people again. And the international community must deal with this.
Okay, and Mr. Khin, should the international community impose sanctions, arms embargo, asset freezes? Do you think on Myanmar's government officials, do you think that would be helpful?
Yes, of course, that will be helpful. Must say we have to focus on ICC referral to Burmese General Mi Aung Hlaing and others. Of course, sanctions and arms embargo. On top of that, we need to talk here now. The bottom line is monsoon rainy season is coming soon in 3-4 months' time. So there is more than 700,000 Rohingya refugees. This is, landslide and, flooding can happen anytime after 3 months. So these Rohingya refugees are in a big danger. So we need to look for immediate solution. What we need is Rohingya. When I met victims, victims of genocide, they told me they want to go back their homeland, but it must be protected. So we need to look at, without UN protection, these people cannot be returned. We need UN protection is needed, and we must. These people, the Rohingya people, they want to return back. We need
returning back, and also the United Nations should step in. Mr. Santiago, this is a crisis that is most likely going to go on for quite some time. Many villages have been recently razed by the government. People saying this is an attempt by the government to destroy evidence of mass killing and genocide. Bangladesh, which now hosts thousands of Rohingya, is suffering financially. What should the international community do to tackle this humanitarian crisis?
Well, I think a couple of things should be done. One is immediate support for the efforts of the Bangladesh government, especially financial support. The UN's presence is quite humongous in providing support, day-to-day support for the refugees. But I think I want to go back to the issue that Khin had raised earlier, that the monsoon rains are supposed to hit Bangladesh, especially the Cox's Bazar area, beginning next month. And the officials that we had met, both at the UN as well as the government, fear that there's going to be lots of loss of life because they do not have the capacity to protect 1 million people in the entire place in Cox's Bazar. Now, what is going to happen is this. A lot of human trafficking is going to start because people will find their own solution to a very difficult, complicated problem. And then you'll have human trafficking syndicates operating, and that is going to lead to a larger problem within Southeast Asia. So human trafficking will be a big problem. I foresee beginning March, April, May. This is something that they're going to deal with.
Well, let me go to
now. I think
Ms. Mairead, this is going to be my last question. Ms. Mairead, we have created international institutions to maintain peace and hold accountable anyone who commits atrocities. We have the UN, we have the EU, we have the International Criminal Court, but all these institutions have done little to try to contain this particular crisis. What is the problem here? Are we talking about different regional agendas, countries like China, Russia, the United States of America not agreeing on how to move forward when it comes to the Rohingya?
Well, the international community must help the Rohingya people, and they can do it. We have witnessed here on the ground the Bangladeshi government has been wonderful in helping. We have the NGOs, the UN here organising what is a tremendous challenge to them, where you have had 1 million people coming over a border, and they have managed to feed them, shelter them, take care of them, but they need more and more help, and outside governments can help them financially and every way to look after the refugees, who are our first and urgent concern. Secondly, the government of Bangladesh and Burma sit down and figure out how you make it possible for the Burmese people, the Rohingya, to stay in Burma, which is their home, which is where they want to be and live in safety.
Mairead Maguire, Tun Khin, Charles Santiago, thank you very much indeed for your contribution to the programme. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hashem, Ahelbarra, and the whole team here. Bye for now.